Will Jimerson, I want to say welcome. I never knew TV, right? Um, Glad to have you here and looking forward to hearing your story. We're gonna get right into it, right? You have a very interesting story, and I appreciate us talking last night, right? And I want to hear what you have to say. So I want to start in 1994, right? Uh, you were arrested for murder at the young age of 13, and from what I understand, you were one of the youngest people to be tried as an adult in the state of Washington, right? Uh, for those unaware, what happened that day in 1994 with you and your schoolmates?
There was a conflict between some young folks in the group that I was with someone that was walking through the neighborhood. It was midnight, probably 1 in the morning, and altercation ensued, and just and there's a lot of other different things that had led up during this particular night. There was some smoking of marijuana, some drinking of alcohol and things of that nature. Uh, where we was exposed, we were inebriated. We had some other different incidences encountered that had occurred. I would say maybe even 30 minutes prior to the incident where the police was called because there was an incident where shots were fired. At that time, I wasn't present. I was actually me and my best friend at the time, who was 12. We went up the street to go purchase some marijuana because that was like our preference of drug of choice. We didn't drink or anything of that nature, so we wanted like, okay, we're gonna smoke some weed. Let's go to the weed man, to the weed house, and they knew us because, like I said, we was already in the throes of the street life, into the street culture. Got a heavy influence background that comes from it, so it was readily available. And so we went to the weed man. And yeah, and think about it now. This is probably like a 20 something. He's maybe like, he seemed like he was a grown man to me. Used to answer the door with a couple straps, a 4.5 and a 9 in a gun holster. He was real tall. He's probably like maybe 26 at the time. But they were, we were solid, we were cool. We can come into the weed spot, buy some weed, also smoke some weed with them as well. That was just like the norm. So by the time we get back to the group, they already had dispersed, and they were in the direction of going towards a corner store, well, a local AM/PM, to get some alcohol. So we caught up with the group, but while we're catching up with the group, the police is arriving. They're like, "Hey, there's somebody with some gunshots." I didn't find out until my trial the reason why they responded, because there were gunshots, but it was actually with the same gun that I was intrigued by that one of the members in my group had. And so when they started to fight, jackets come off. I'm picking up everybody's jackets and stuff like that off the ground. And when I picked the jacket up, I realized the gun was in the front pocket of one of the individuals that was with me in the group. And it was another young person that was 14, a female. And I kept asking her, "Let me see the gun, let me see the gun," right? And there was a part of me that didn't think it was real because it was a small caliber 22. But we was already activated in the lifestyle. And when they started ensuing the fight, I guess maybe just on top of being inebriated, also being young, not having no real sense of direction, I thought it was cool to pull the gun out and even clicked it towards my head, like to get, I don't know, maybe to get some attention. And since I didn't garner the same response that I thought I was going to get, I pointed the gun in the direction of the individual that was being assaulted, who wasn't with the group, and the bullet ricocheted off the ground, hit my friend in his foot, and it went into the back, which proliferated the heart, lung, and liver. And then another one, I believe, went into like the leg or something in the arm, and didn't know anyone was killed. We were just young and rambunctious and very recalcitrant, defiant towards authority. And so my best friend at the time, like I said, he was just 12. This happened March 11th. I just turned 13 February of that year, February 23rd. So literally I'm about less than a month, of just turning. I'm like maybe 2.5 weeks of being 13 at this time. But my friend, he indicated that he was shot in the foot. And we play around and we joke around. Still, I'm not really believing the gun is really real because of who I had acquired it from. And he's like, nah, man, I'm shot in the foot, and I'm laughing, thinking it's funny. And I'm looking at his shoe. There's nothing penetrable as far as a bullet or any indicators that he'd been shot. There's no blood, anything of the sort. And so I'm laughing, thinking he's joking because we're kids and we play around like this. And that was kind of like a part of our camaraderie. You know, we joked around and we played a lot. We didn't take things that should be taken serious that we didn't do that. And so I'm thinking he's playing, I'm joking, I'm laughing, but my laughter is going further than the joke. And I'm thinking like, oh man, is he really serious? Because he's not picking up the cadence of laughing like, oh, I'm psych, I'm just playing. He's like, nah, man, I really got shot. So we sit him down, looked at his foot, and you can see that there was just a little bit of like the leather from he has a classic Reebok black Adidas back in the day, and it was just a little bit. It showed that the part of the leather was kicked up, and so we took his shoe off, and looking at his shoe, he had a one red speck on his sock, and I was like, oh man. So the first thing was like, let's get him to the hospital. But before I could be a part of the group that got him to the hospital, there was an older gentleman who was from the neighborhood. He was from my block and everything. He came, he was like, man, what are you doing out here, man? He was, like, man, you guys is out here tripping. He's like, man, basically like, come with me. I'm about to take you to the house, man. You tripping, man. You guys out here wilding out. And so the police came or whatever. They took my friend and going to the hospital. I ended up going back to my paternal grandparents. I'm actually, this is older brother, he's like early 30s. So he's one of the older homies in the neighborhood, got some authority around the situation. So while we're walking back, I end up walking back to the house. I remember waking up the next day and I'm like, man, I'm about to hit the block. I leave probably late in the afternoon, a little after 12, 1 o'clock. I walk up to the block, which is about maybe 5 blocks away from my actual residence. I'm in the hood, where everything happens, and I remember seeing one of my partners, one of my homies, who a year later, he actually catches a homicide and end up serving 25 years on a 28 sentence. He's 28-year sentence. He's been out a couple of years now, but at this time, we're both free. And he's like, man. He's like, man, I asked him, I said, man, you see such and such. I don't want to have to throw anybody's names into the interview, but I'm just asking him, have you seen such and such, which was my best friend. We all from the same hood. And he said, yeah, I seen him. They came through here. He was in the cab. He talking about, man, you accidentally, you hit him, you shot him or whatever, but that was it. And they all just left. They went to some like motel or whatever. Because back then we wasn't walking around with cell phones. This is 1994. So everything is, you got to be in the space to get the information. And so I was like, all right. And I walks into what we had at that time was a neighborhood like arcade. They had a couple video games in there, but the primary reason why it was open is because they sold, like neighborhood fast food, chicken wings and burgers and stuff like that, burgers and fries. So I walk into the spot. That was also one of our locations. It was on our block. So that was our location. We had that, a couple barbershops and stuff as well. So I walks into the location and I can remember the owner and a few people that were there that was working. And they was like, they asked me, and it's like, man, did you hear about, somebody getting killed last night over by this, they gave the location up. Which is like in my neighborhood by Garfield High School. And I'm like, nah, because, nobody had, I wasn't thinking it had anything to pertaining to me or us because nobody had died. No, it was, to me, the incident had not occurred. And so they was like, yeah, then they start going into details and it's like, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, nah, that can't be real. I'm like, nah.
How did you feel inside when you started to put 2 and 2 together?
I'm being honest with you. I was like, it couldn't be real. I was like, nah, that didn't happen. Really? It wasn't even a gun. Wasn't even. I'm trying to size it up in my head, and I'm like, what I had in my mind and what had occurred, those two things didn't mesh. It wasn't real. I didn't see it until I was listening further into the conversation, and I'm like, nah, that can't be true. And then when I seen my best friend, he ended up coming to the neighborhood, and he was like, man, they put me in the same room. They was trying to, bring this young person back to life, and it's like their life had expired. And I'm like, what? And you asked me how I felt in that time and in that moment. I can remember like it was yesterday. I literally felt like everything on the inside of me had collapsed. Like everything inside of me, like felt like a ton of bricks, like at my feet, like something in my spirit, like I'm not gonna say it died, but it definitely it crumbled. It definitely collapsed. I felt it, but I had to have this outward stoic expression because I'm still not balancing the reality with the weight of the circumstances, and then lo and behold, about a few weeks later, I get apprehended. I'm gonna be honest, I wasn't necessarily apprehended. The word got out that I was the perpetrator. I was the person. So everybody's looking for me. It was the police is looking for me. Is during the super predator theory, time in this country's history, and I remember my grandmother, everybody was just, it shook the community. It really had shaken the community that we have a 13-year-old, committing some of the, horrendous acts, and it impacted my family. My brother was upset. My mom was upset. I can remember because the detectives came, they were looking for me. And I remember my father and my uncle taking it upon themselves and said, they didn't want anything else to happen, as far as a tragedy with myself or, a negative impact, engagement with law enforcement. So they ended up, like, hey, we're gonna go ahead and turn you in and we're gonna deal with it from that aspect, right? Because they was already looking for me. So that's what I did. I turned myself in and I didn't come home until 20 and a half years later.